are going live right now. It's preparing the live stream for the meeting, and it'll be should be good. Any minutes. There we go. We're live.
And Randy, Jen, let me know she's running a few minutes late, so she's on her way. If you guys are talking, I cannot hear you. It's like very muffled.
I'm going to turn up the volume.
I can hear you, John.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We'll speak up. We'll, okay, so, any board member? Yes, sir.
Are you amending the agenda?
I was.
Oh, since you're amending the agenda.
Sure.
Wondering if we could add an administrative report for Dr. Pearson. You go.
We can. We'll amend the agenda for add a C. Is that acceptable, or would you like to make it A and move A
No,
to B?
I
and
think
B
a
to
C is fine.
All right. We'll add C, administrative reports. All right. Okay, any board member comment going once, going twice? Sold? No? Excellent. We'll move on to item 4, discussion possible action. Easton and Reading Region 9 Tri-Board meeting start time.
So we approved the times for 7:30.
Correct.
And now we're meeting at 7. I believe. Do you want to move these meetings to 7?
The other 2 boards have already made this change?
Reading has.
Reading has, and Region 9 will potentially next week?
That's the hope.
Okay. Does this have any impact on our scheduling with the, no, it doesn't change the meetings to special or anything like that? No, okay.
It might. If we're moving it earlier, I think it does.
Because
we're already a special meeting.
We've already alerted.
Because we had to by the 31st of January.
Yeah.
But, so what, right? I mean, the downside is we can't add things to the agenda while we're there. If we plan ahead enough, that won't be an issue.
Right, we just add,
Right.
yeah, make the agenda. Okay.
And then are we also saying essentially Region 9 has the veto power there, because if they don't change it, then we're all gonna just sort of stay with 7:30, right?
Okay.
So, if we approve it, then we have the flexibility, and Dr. McKinnon can figure it out and, you know, try to create the best possible outcome. But maybe we're approving a motion to move to 7 o'clock, with the stipulation that Region 9 also approves 7 o'clock, barring that, we revert to 7:30.
Okay, so I'll take a motion that we amend, well, I guess these are the Easton Board of Education meeting schedule, 2023, 2024, no, just 2023 meeting schedule, and amend the January 31st, no, excuse me, the May 23rd, 2023, and the October 24th, 2023, Easton Reading Region 9 Joint Boards meeting from 7:30 PM to 7 PM, so long as Region 9 issues the same amendment, so to speak.
Second, or
Thank you,
motion,
John.
so motion?
Thank you.
Second.
Good. John, Jeff, done. So, vote.
Thank you for that.
All in favor? Thank you. Devin, you
Devin
good?
is indicating yes.
Thank you, Devin. Have you heard that? Okay,
That's great.
and we're on to the meat, 2023-2024 budget.
Okay.
I sent out a quick note last week, I think, just setting the table. Be great if we can make a lot of progress tonight, or make enough progress to have a vote. We dangle out, we would cancel next week's budget workshop meeting unless you all wanna get together for pizza and beer. If we make good progress tonight, right now we're at a 4.32%, give or take.
Yep.
Okay, and, I'll turn over to you, or we can solicit input from the board members, whichever you wanna do first.
I've got some ideas that I put together in a few slides.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So I think the goal is kind of really to focus on the big rocks, right? There are some pebbles sometimes, but unless they're in your shoe, then hopefully we can focus on those big ideas. And from your questions, I think we identified some big ideas between tonight's meeting and the last meeting that we had. We have some examples of some budget changes based on your questions, and we can possibly remove the carpet replacement in the guidance suite at Helen Keller for $6,131, the water tank repair for $13,000 if we are looking at the replacement of the water tank. So that repair and replacement, I think that's a conversation that we need to have. The possible reduction of the 0.5 custodian request, which we can talk more about in a moment, and the reduction of the retraction of the para request, the instructional recess para request for $9,450. So these are the possible items of the budget we can remove. Once we talk about them, I can show you how they fit into kind of the big picture. We didn't really reallocate anything. And in terms of a reduction, we can have a conversation about reducing medical insurance from 10.5% to 8.5%, which is a reduction of approximately $45,000, and reducing Chromebooks from $52,000 to $33,350, which equates to about one grade level plus a few extra, so about 115 Chromebooks as opposed to what we were asking for before. As long as we can identify in our strategic priorities kind of the method by which we're going to replace Chromebooks in the future, which is typically 2 grades at a time, or 2 entry points. An entry point in the elementary grades and an entry point in grade 6, where we are replacing Chromebooks on a schedule. But
Yeah.
I think next year, based on where we are, we could probably just do Chromebooks in 1 grade, not in 2 grades, which you can see the reduction. There were questions from a member just about grants in general, and so we prepared this slide, just providing kind of an overview of the grant funds in terms of ESSA that we received. The first ESSA grant you received which was really from the time period of 2020, 2021, was from the CARES Act. It was for $87,302. That grant has expired, those funds were expended, and those monies went towards cleaning, health-related expenses really closely aligned with the pandemic. ESSER 1 occurred from 2020 until 2022. It was in the amount of $24,146, and those funds were expended towards Chromebooks and cases. ESSER 2 was open from 2021, and it expires September 2023, and that was for $123,338. But in essence, those funds have been expended. We've identified ways in which we use those funds that you see up above. And please excuse me, I'm just noticing something that bothers me. I'm just going to fix that on the fly. And ESSER 2 was primarily used for interns, summer academy, middle school extracurricular, and consulting. And the ARP ESSER is really the funds that are left from the ESSER programs, which is about $57,788. That's basically 2023 to 2024. And we have allocated ESSER funds in that amount to those positions. So a math para-educator at Samuel Staples School, a share towards the ESL teacher or the multilingual language learner teacher, and a para-educator that is kind of aligned with that position for a share of $18,100. And we allocated $20,000, if you recall, during our budget presentation towards the math coordinator, which was an offset of something that's in our operating budget. So that's just really an overview based on your questions about ESSER. And there are other grants that offset operating funds in our budget as well. We talked about those, but they were Title I for $40,504. $58,957 for 23-24. Title II for $16,792, and Title III for $4,247. Title IV for $10,000. And so we identified in the budget where these items were offset, and the cost center where those grant offsets can be found. And that's just, you've already seen this slide. That was the ARP ESSER slide that I mentioned previously, and how we're using ARP ESSER funds to offset those particular positions in our budget as well. So thank you for your questions on the grant funds. That's kind of an overview. We hope that answered those questions.
Could I
Yes.
ask it? Could you flip back to the other one, first one? Thanks. So for 23-24, are we now picking up the expense for intern, summer academy, middle school extracurricular, and consulting?
No, those are already, those funds will be expended by the end of this year. The only grant funding that will remain for next year is the $57,788 for ARP ESSER funding.
Yeah.
So the ARP ESSER total grant is much greater than that.
Right.
Was the amount
Well,
last year.
what I'm asking is, those four items, which are funded this year, they're not going to be funded next year. Are those dollars in our current budget?
So Summer Academy, as the first example, Summer Academy is going to self-fund. And so, in other words, the amount that folks are paying in tuition will be the amount that the actual,
Gotcha.
we're gonna try to have a zero, try to have a zero. So so one of our accountants, Dave, and myself have been working with the Summer Academy leadership to determine what that's gonna look like, and where we can provide that as continue to have it as an opportunity without the ESSER funding.
So at some point, will we have an understanding of what tuition would look like for that, so that we can make an informed decision about, whether or not that sounds like something that our families in town can pay, because we feel like this is a valuable program, and if we don't feel, then we might say we'd like to increase by X amount in order to help to make sure that that's a program that continues?
Yes, we can
Okay.
get that information.
Absolutely. Right now, we're just at the, you know, just in the sort of the planning, initial
Yeah.
planning phases and finding out, you know, who might be interested.
Okay,
Remember the numbers from last year on that? How many folks, how many kids participated? Yeah,
If
that's
you
okay.
give me a minute, I can tell you.
We can find it, I'm sure.
I can find it. Give me a second. I can ask something else while I look.
But middle school extracurricular, obviously, that's in our budget.
That's in our budget for this year,
Consulting is in our budget in some capacity, no?
and also augmented by the grant.
And interns, we have about a third of that in our budget this next year, right?
we have for one intern, right, the
Right,
17,000 or 18,000?
I think it's just the one.
16?
Double check.
Or 16?
I believe it's just one intern.
Yes.
Yeah, if it's 16, it's one intern.
Right, okay. Okay,
And then, so, we look at the 57, and then we go, the title 1, 2, 3, 4,
mm-hmm,
that total was,
well, the title
75,000.
1, 2, 3, 4, we get every year.
Yes,
So,
2-year revolving grants.
right,
I only have this
so
year's.
we should be fine with this.
Okay.
I'll get you the numbers for Summer Academy. I only have the current I have current interest. I don't have last year's
Okay.
with me.
Okay, we can get that for you. So John, you asked about kind of the vision and the scope for a summer academy, tuition costs, and kind of describing what that looks like so you can make a decision
Right.
in the future.
Right.
Got it. And we'll get you the numbers.
Okay, sure.
Because that's a week-by-week thing anyway, right? Some parents
Summer
will say,
academy,
I want it for 4 weeks, some get it for 2,
Right.
so it's all over the
Right.
board. Okay,
Correct.
great, thank you for this.
Okay. You're welcome. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation a possible reduction to the budget, which will show you how that fits into the budget. We've developed a sandbox, which we've talked to you about in the past, which is a kind of a reduction calculator. But Dr. Clapp and his team requested a 0.5 custodian increase at Helen Keller. The key details there are that Helen Keller Middle School is approximately 120,000 square feet. We currently have 3.5 custodians. In the past, Ms. Cram identified that we did have 4 custodians, probably 2016, around that timeline. And so I think the key takeaway is that our educators and our custodians really care deeply about the building, and they do have high standards for making sure the building is really in the best shape it can be. And this example from the Common Education Data Standards is an example of the type of level of cleaning you can expect based on a custodian being assigned to an 8-hour shift. And so you can consider the type of cleaning in 5 levels. Level 1 could be spotless cleaning, such that might be found in a hospital or a corporate suite. So one custodian in an 8-hour 8-hour period, cleaning to that level of standard, is capable of cleaning up to 10,000 square feet. Level 2 might be intensive cleaning, reserved for restrooms, special education areas. And at that level, a custodian probably supplied in an 8-hour period can clean between 11,000 to 18,000 square feet. Level 3 cleaning, which is cleaning required to ensure the health and comfort of building users, typically in a school, can clean anywhere from 19,000 to 25,000 square feet during an 8-hour shift. And so if you think about the upper bound of that at 25,000 square feet, multiply that by 3.5 custodians, you come to the equation there that at a level 3 cleaning, we're really meeting the needs of about 100,000 square feet, and the building is 120,000 square feet. So I think that's where the team is feeling this tension about making sure the building is clean every night. Level 4 is not generally acceptable for a school environment, somewhere between 26,000 and 46,000 square feet in an 8-hour period. And level 5 is not really considered healthy at all, where an 8-hour period is anywhere from 47,000 to 80,000 square feet. Now, when I looked at the standards, which I found very interesting. There's also different spaces within the building as well. So a library that's carpeted requires more cleaning than a library or a space that's not carpeted, right? A classroom that has no carpet is considered the standard of about 13,000 square feet versus a space that has carpeting. A gym may count as 80,000 square feet, but it's easier to clean than, say, the entranceway of a school. So it's not just the levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, and the total square feet and the number of FTE. It's also understanding what each space and how each space is either easier to clean or more difficult to clean. So I think what we can do here, this is the first year you've requested this back in the budget, Dr. Clark?
Last year I requested it was.
Or the second year. So, you know, we have in our overall vision the idea of a facilities and a business operations and facilities manager. I'm hoping that what we could do is conduct a survey which looks at these standards, looks at the square foot space, the type of spaces that we have in the building, and perhaps in the spring we can look at, you know, how much square feet can we actually cover with 3.5 versus 4, and to put this conversation back into our strategic planning document. What I'm essentially saying is we might be able to dig deeper into this request, not fund it this year, but really get more information about it, look at this type of data, these standards, and make an informed decision in the future. So I just wanted to give you the background there in terms of the level of cleaning, the type of space, the number of custodians, the total number of square feet, and perhaps we can, you know, you can have a discussion about that. And this really gets to our budget reduction sandbox, which is an interactive tool that we can use for your, well, I was going to say your enjoyment, it's probably not your enjoyment, but for your planning purposes. So this is the budget. As Randy pointed out, it is at 4.32%, so we haven't made any changes to the budget. However, if we go into the budget playground, you can see here that if we set healthcare to 8.5%, that's a reduction of 41,000, which means the budget goes from 4.32 down to 3.99. If we take out the recess para request, which was $9,450, then it further reduces the budget down to 3.94. If you remove the carpet by $6,000, it takes the budget down again, and so on. Here's the water heater, here's the Chromebook request, and here's the 0.5 custodian. So with those items, you're down to about a 3.57. And you can change those items, you can add items, you can edit items, you can go up or down on health insurance. And we'll be able to do a plug and play here.
Any questions?
I have a question about the healthcare insurance, and obviously it's the biggest item on there, which would have the biggest impact. How did you arrive at the reduction to make it 8.5% versus what it was?
The only thing that's really changed is that we looked at what we budgeted, what's been withdrawn so far, and the balance in our health benefits account. And when we last did this analysis, we planned for claims averaging at about $205,000 per month for 6 months, which was a little over, I forget the actual. So it was 1.2 million, somewhere there. Now we have the same forecast, but we have 5 months to go for the end of the year, which means, you know, we've picked up that room.
Okay.
The January claims were quite low.
Yeah.
And, but in talking with Ms. Cram, who talked to Brown and Brown, we think that's kind of an outlier. We do think that the claims will go up in February, and already in February, they're well beyond what January was.
Okay.
So January is not a good indication about how we're going to finish the year,
Sure.
but I think we're still close to around the $200,000 benchmark with just one less month,
Okay.
which I feel it means that at the end of year picture is much better for us. And if the end of the year picture is better for us, in terms of what we have in the health benefits account and where we think our claims are going to fall, it means that we have some additional wiggle room in terms of what the increase is set at next year, without getting into John's concern, which is this cycle of, paying into the future just to, paying now to pay, to offset the future. And I don't think this arrangement gets kind of where to your concern is. I think we're in a decent spot, if that makes any sense.
Well, that means that we'll end up with claims of 2.5 million, give or take, maybe 2.6 million, which is considerably higher than what we had last year. We were just a tick under 2 million. So we will have to go into our reserve to balance things out. Fortunately, we have a reserve that will allow us to do that.
Well, I always struggle with the sheet though, but, so we budgeted 2.1 and we think we're gonna spend, if we average 2,200 a month for the next 5 months, we'll spend 2.4. Just round, so that we're over budget by 300,000. And I'll ask this question, I think I asked it last, did we start the year at 522 or at $1 million in our reserve?
1,022,000.
Okay. So we still, then in that, with that math, then we should, and I'm not including
But we started, the health benefits account beginning balance was 522, and we added an additional contribution of 500.
okay, so
So 1 point.
January 1st, January 2nd, we had 1,022,000. If our claims are 2.4, if we just assume another 200,000 a month for the next 5 months, but then we have admin fees, and the HSA, right, that we have to fund, both of those. But then we have premium contributions that come back from the members.
Right. My guess was the 500,000 that we put in last year, we will spend this year.
I think that, it seems like that's right, we're gonna end around 500,000 again at the end of this year as a reserve. Okay. I mean, in the end, $40,000 is a rounding error for the healthcare,
Sure.
so, I don't feel strongly at the moment, one way or another, to take it out or leave it in, because, it's a small number in the scheme of things, in a $2.5 million plus or minus. So, but having said that, next year's budget, if this year's budget, what's the actual dollar amount budgeted, the total dollar amount budgeted compared to the 2,093,000, call it 2,094,000 that we budgeted for the current year?
Can you get that, Sarah?
Yeah, if you click on where it says, district-wide, and,
Well, you have it right here in column
Yeah.
G.
Should be 227,175.
oh, yeah, perfect, there's the.
2,027,000? No, 2,227,000?
Is
That's
G,
that's only the increase, that would be that's the increase to, or the decrease, so we said that we were going to put in initially 10.5%, and so that increase would be,
hold on, let me just refresh this.
we're gonna put in an additional 227. Again, this is maybe 230.
At 10.5 or 8.5?
8.5.
And 8.5. So if
That doesn't comport with our budget of 2,093,000 times 8.5%, but,
Let me just.
right, 2.1
so,
million,
so,
8.5% is 190,000, give or take.
so right now,
Just doing the math.
There we go. If I hover over I-13 and I-20, it totals, $2,313,627. That's the total. And if you want me to get the increase, then it is 145 and 76. So that the increase is $219,846.
Okay,
That's 10.5%.
that's the 10.5%, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, 2,313,000?
Yeah.
At 10.5%?
Right.
And are there any changes next year to HSA contributions that we're aware of, like higher, lower?
You mean as part of the contract?
Yeah. Some reason I thought it,
Yeah, there was a year three,
Maybe it's a half a
that's,
Probably not.
that sounds right, that sounds like a year three, 0.5% for the
I think
teachers.
Two contracts.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But, yeah, we can look up the contract, but,
okay, all right, it's probably not, that's not.
Yeah.
And then,
I think one way of looking at it is the total pot of money we have right now is about 1.7 million. The claims between now and the end of the year is about 1 million. So the delta, right, left over, if you look at that slide, is really the difference between the possible claims between now and the end of the year and the total money on hand, which is what's encumbered, what's in our health benefits account. We've already calculated the various fees and deposits in and out, right?
Yep.
And so getting back to my seesaw slide, we have about $675,000 to play with, which means our health benefits account could be around the $675,000 range,
at the
Which
end of
you-
the year, okay,
which is your typical
that's what it
3
should
plus
be.
months.
where it should be,
Right.
right? So, you potentially have $75,000 in there to play with,
Right,
which is why we went from 10.5 down to
right.
8.5.
We, yeah, I mean, it seems prudent, it seems logical. When I look at all of the items that you have going from the 4 and change down to the 375,
Yep, let me go back to that.
I think, that all looks like belt tightening to say, all right, well, maybe we're gonna do without that recess para and we're gonna do without the, and we're gonna do without the, and we're gonna do, and, okay, so it's 357, not 375, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
excuse me.
yeah, sorry, I transposed those. But we have to get credit for that, because what happens is we show up with a 3.57
Right.
and they go, what else can you do? And the what else is, absolutely, honestly, we can start cutting instruction, and that's not great.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though we have built some credibility with the Board of Finance that, we're not playing games, we're not trying to hide money, we're not trying to, and so I think if we come to them with 357 and say, honestly I hope they'll believe us. I think they'll still cut us. So we should be mindful of what that is.
What did we get what was the increase last year?
Oh,
Don't remember.
it
Anybody
was very
remember?
small,
Yeah,
maybe
It was-
2%.
No, it's
I
3.5.
thought it was in the threes, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was
It was?
252.
Yeah, it was
We
the
started
largest,
at 425.
increase we've had in a decade.
Yeah, I think
I
we
know.
started at 425 and then we came down to like 395 and then they
And-
cut another
And
100,000.
then they said, was it 100 or was it 50?
I think
No, they cut 100, but they almost cut 200.
It was close.
it was very close. It was dicey. It was like, oh, I guess 100. Like, okay, we'll take that as opposed to 200.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know,
Well, let me just, you, go ahead.
No, I mean, this is kind of part of the narrative we have to sell.
Ask you about that.
There's districts around us that are
Yeah.
coming in the 4s, 5s.
Yeah.
This information is about 3 weeks old now, and a lot's happened, but that's kind of where we were.
And that's actually rosy for the state overall.
Yeah.
The districts, I mean, the whole ESSER situation, they didn't do the smart thing.
Yeah.
So they have a huge cliff and there's some ridiculous numbers.
This water heater thing, we've got to resolve the water heater one way or the other, so we have to be careful about that production.
Right.
So that's,
I have two comments. My first one's a question regarding that. If we don't do that, then we have to buy a new one. And where does the 42,000 come from?
That was the estimate for a new one, wasn't it?
right.
Yes.
To replace the one that's not working.
Is this the same, 13,000?
13,000.
13,000 is good?
13,000 was significantly smaller. We weren't replacing the same capacity.
That's it.
If we were gonna replace the exact capacity, it's 42,000.
Right. But I think we've established that we don't need the kind of hot water that those two big units generate. So this is obviously a much smaller version, or is this about repair?
That is a much smaller version.
Much smaller version.
So is this a repair or replacement?
Replacement.
It is a replacement.
It's to replace one from the one big one that's not working to a smaller unit because the capacity is not necessary.
Okay, I thought we said repair at one point.
I know we're talking about hot water, but this is like a hot stove. We got to be careful not to, right? I don't think we fully know that answer, right?
Fair point.
Well, I guess, I was under the impression this was a repair. This is a replacement, so we can't do one or the other.
It actually
says both.
It's replaced, either
Right.
replaced with a smaller one or replaced with the same one or something similar. So I go back to, I don't know that, if it's broken and
It's
we
dead.
need a redundant system, then I don't know that we can
Yeah,
not
we can't remove that.
spend this.
Yeah, we can't remove that.
So what I would make that a 0.
And then if we learn something else, great.
And then you can see how that changes, from a 3.57 down to 3.65,
Okay.
and so on.
The other items, to a certain extent, the carpet, will come back in another year, hopefully, the Chromebooks, we're cutting back 2 classroom replacement and make it into 1 classroom or 1 grade level replacement, which is not ideal. I know, well, and again, I know these things break and we're out. I know we spent a bunch of money going into COVID on these, or in COVID. So I don't know if I should be concerned about that cut or not. I'm not overly concerned about the carpet square, sorry Steve, but, the recess para and the custodian are additions that we're just not adding. And I know that's not the right answer necessarily, but, those are, if I'm sitting on the Board of Finance and I'm paying attention to this, I'm going, okay, you guys are adding, and now you're subtracting. Don't pat yourself on the back too hard. Same token, I get it, you're coming in with a lean budget, which we ask you to do every year. Don't ask us to find, something in your expense report that you're not supposed to have in your expense report, so, but it is the question, it's always the question. We sit here, we gnash our teeth and we take stuff out and we go, gee whiz, and then they're gonna take more stuff out and then, we sit here, come back in a month and do the exercise all over again, so. Listen, I think we all wanna go in with, we feel like is meeting the needs of the kids as frugally as we possibly can, same token, not cutting any of the bone and saving some of the meat too, so, and we are, I think, with some of our strategic plans, the science, the math, the math coordinator, they're the big rocks that we're adding make up, and this is something we'll, talk about in more detail before we sit in front of them, how much of the 700,000 constitutes the big rocks, which are the strategic pillars, the strategic plan of the district. And some of the 700, most of it probably is just contractual increases, right, and healthcare.
I'm not Go ahead, Jeff.
Briefly, I agree with everything you just said, Randy. My one concern on here is the Chromebooks, just making sure that next year it's not well, now we gotta do 3 classrooms or 3 grades in order to make up for the fact that we did 1, because I don't see us sitting here next year going, well, we're in much better shape this year and we're gonna ask for 25% and everyone's gonna be fine with it. Like, let's be really clear, it's gonna be like this next year too.
Yeah.
So if we're comfortable doing that now, we should know that it puts us on a trajectory
I mean,
that
don't
we're
you
all.
need an annual refresh
Right.
anyway of that kind of thing?
You do.
Because technology just
Yes.
sunsets as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, and we used to have to teach a class on that, right? Because it's just not the kind of thing that we had the internal expertise on, and now I think we're getting taught the class on that by Sarah, which is a very good thing. So if you guys say that it's the right thing and we're comfortable with it, then I think I can live with the Chromebook one as well.
You could go 1 class and a half, so that you're not, like, so that next year you could also do 1 class and a half a grade level. So that might be a nice midpoint.
Well, didn't we get a lot of new Chromebooks last year from the ESSER grants?
We sure did.
Right.
They are $290 a piece, so if you go back to that other slide, we can calculate it out.
Well, that's,
Yeah,
but the point is, there was a nice infusion of
yes.
New books.
brand new
Right.
Yes.
brand new books last year.
So if you leave it the way that it is right now, next May, you will have, at the end of April, the beginning of May, there are Chromebooks that will reach the end of life and not be able to be used. So the number that I initially presented included making sure that we replaced those when April and May, sort of that timeline hit. This would make it so that those Chromebooks would be out of commission for the end of the school year. And then we would have to have monies to purchase the following year.
Yeah, the ESSER grants were great because we got to 1-to-1 ratio very quickly, but it's a cliff in itself because
It
it
is.
means like, oh, wait a second, how are we gonna sequence the refresh of these things so that 5 years from now, we don't end up with, oh, we gotta replace all those things we got.
So just
So-
round numbers, we have 800 kids.
So they have like they have like a
No, it's
four,
okay.
they have like a 4.5 year lifespan. And so when kids get them, putting up brand new ones, 6th grade, you come to Helen Keller, you get a new Chromebook, you get a new case, you use that Chromebook 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. It's just that's a perfect refresh cycle. So what happens to those computers when the 8th grader leaves? Now remember, the middle schoolers are gonna be the heaviest users of the technology. So they are not, so by the time your 8th grader is done using it, some of them are still in really great shape because kids are really responsible and they're great, and some of them need some love and attention. And so those would get recycled to the elementary school where there is a potential of, where they don't need to use them, they don't use them as much as they do so those would go to the kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. And then ideally, you'd start with 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade every year with sort of a new device.
So 3 and 6.
So 3 and 6, so that your 3rd grader starts out and they keep that Chromebook, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and then those Chromebooks recycle back to the K1 and 2. So that is the plan. And so each one of those, so each Chromebook has like an end of life that comes up on our, I don't have to actually write it down, it's built in,
Sure.
thankfully.
It's like a clock that's
It's like a
ticking.
little clock that ticks, and so we get a list of all of those, and so we can kind of see where they're going to, when they're gonna end. But in the ideal world, that's where the refresh would hit. So,
How does that equate to a per annum? How many should we replace every year based on all that? Because I can't follow.
Get it out.
That's the number, right.
Right, so is it the third and sixth grade,
It's
which
the
is hundred
third-
and eighty kids?
It's the third grade and the sixth grade, can you?
So two
Yeah.
grade levels.
It's two grade
We
levels.
Two
just don't
grade
know
levels,
Yeah.
specific
which is
number of
hundred and eighty
students.
kids times
There you go.
$290 is 52,000.
It's 52,000 and that is exactly what I put in your budget.
Well, how do we end
Well,
up at 18?
because
Because
if I take that out, if I take some out.
But
and
we didn't save 36,000, so.
No, I didn't take out all of it. I only took out some of it.
Right, so it would've been 26 if it were a full class out, or full.
Yeah. So we went from
So we went from 52 to
52,000 to
33.
33, which means we're still buying 115. So it's basically a grade level plus a few extras.
Let me see if I can find some money.
Alright, we'll come back.
On your phone?
Yes. Last year, at the end of the year, we had money, that we didn't spend for substitutes. Both at,
Because we couldn't
both
find it,
at,
basically.
both at Staples and at Keller. This year, we have 3 interns and the same amount of money. And that money is, I think one is 42% spent and one is 30-something spent.
So,
Would it make sense to cut back on those dollars when we haven't hit those high marks in the last couple of years?
so if we look at those sublines, a couple of things are happening that I checked out with that. I spoke with our HR person who happens to be here
It
today.
happens to be here. yes.
So if I speak incorrectly, she can jump in. There are some folks who are going to be going out, and so we will need that money for long-term subs. One of the savings that you see with subs is that they're very hard to get, but a long-term sub, that will not likely be the case.
So the sub line
So
is
the
used for
sub
daily
line-
subs,
And
but also for
For
long-term
long-term
replacements.
You also will notice that there is a negative in the substitute line
For special ed.
for special ed.
Yeah.
And I will be coming to you and saying, we can transfer money between those lines
Sure.
to cover the shortage that's in that special ed area, which I do not anticipate decreasing. I anticipate that increasing. So,
The interns were also last year.
and
The ESSER grant funded interns last year.
last year.
Oh, okay. Well, we had that and we still had money.
So just,
in both
I
those
did
things.
identify some places that I do think that you'll be able to, that you'll have some funds this year, but in your, one of the places that I'm concerned about is the 330 line. And so if you take a look at your 330 line, other professional services, you'll see that 89% and 81% of that has been expended. And so I will be coming to you guys looking to transfer funds from,
You're gonna need to, sure.
I'm gonna need to transfer into those lines for the services that students will need. I do think that we can take a little bit of, there also is an error on this report. So you'll see where it says athletic equipment, $26,000, and the technology equipment is negative 41,000. It's hitting the wrong line. And I have to figure out why it is on this report that it's putting that in athletics.
Okay.
I'm not really sure why it's doing that.
What are safety pads and do we need $13,000 of safety pads?
Dr. Clapp,
Excellent question,
we,
Dr. Clapp.
yes, that was actually,
The gym floor was redone.
Yeah.
A lot of all the padding had to be removed in order to make that happen. And when they put the padding back up, they only put it underneath the basketball hoops. So if someone runs through, making
Right.
a layup, they hit the wall. Problem is, we do more than play basketball. So we've had to lean padding up around the areas that are not directly underneath the basketball for when they play volleyball or, slam ball or whatever all the games they play. So we actually have temporary, just floor mats that are leaning against the wall. So I would love to be able to finish the job and get those areas between the hoops covered.
Okay.
Happy to take you on a walk if you want to see it.
Okay.
I was there last week.
The last one I've got is there is in special ed $97,150 for a yet-to-be-determined outplacement. Jen, when do you think you're gonna know whether that money's gonna be spent or not?
We probably, I have to look and see when the PPT is scheduled. To know that, I'm gonna guess within the next month or so.
Okay, well, that's still in the,
Still in our window.
that's still in our window, okay. Because that's, I mean, that's a bunch of dough, that, if we're not gonna spend it, I'd rather reallocate some of the things that we're cutting as opposed to, just not using it at all.
Sarah, are there any items that, you look at and say, all right, we're just not gonna spend that line item this year, and maybe you've already done this, and you said, okay, if I budgeted 37,000, I'm gonna budget 30 next year, because I know we're just not gonna get there. Substitutes are something I was thinking about as well, because I know they've been just impossible to get.
Yeah.
And hence the intern will help, but if you have, folks going out on, for, reasons, disability or others, you need long-term subs, I mean, that's, you can project that, and that makes sense. But, so we'll put subs on the side for the moment. Any, I'm sure you've already done this, but are there categories that?
Yeah, let me give you some examples. So, so an example would be the, so an example specifically would be instructional texts, online, some instructional texts. We don't need, so you'll notice that there's a decrease there of 25%, 13,000. The leveled books at different levels and topics, there's still money in that, there's still money in those lines to purchase those, but it does not need to be as significant because you decided as a board to purchase some last year. So that's one example. So that's under Samuel Staples and books and instructional texts.
Would that be an unexpended fund this year that would correlate to a lower budget for next year, or is it just an unexpended for this year and we pocket the difference, so to speak, and return to the town?
That is that I anticipate that we will use that funds this year, and that we didn't need to budget as much next year.
Okay.
So that's why that. So areas where I think.
It's already done.
So it's already done.
Yeah.
Areas that I think we will not spend all of. I do not think that we will spend all of tuition reimbursement. It's not a whole lot of money, but it's 2,000 and change.
Yep.
But we shall see.
Yeah, okay.
I do not think we'll use, sorry, Dr. Clapp, I do not think we will be using all of the money in conferences and travel. There's 17,000, there's 17,000 in there. And I also want to take a closer look at our standardized testing to make sure that we are, whether or not we need all the funds that are in those lines there.
Okay.
Sarah, what about breakage in salaries?
Do you remember that 330 line that I talked about?
Yeah.
That's where I'm earmarking that. So I will be coming, I do not feel comfortable just taking that. I wanna make sure that I'm not setting you up to have a problem with your other professional services line.
Okay,
by not
so you're gonna
anticipating
use that breakage to balance some of the other stuff that appears
Because
to be
usually it's
floating away.
because we were not able to hire that we need to use the other professional services.
Well, I know we do that with the BCBA.
Yeah.
Are we doing that anyplace else?
No, no, that's within special education.
Just that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
in that special ed area. I know you asked about library books. We might be able to take a little bit off next year. The $10,000 was a return to what was previously budgeted.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, there is, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, so please correct me. There is a list of library books that's published in the spring, and so they usually like to earmark some funds to be able to purchase those so that they have them for next year based on
It's whatever
the library
award is,
awards.
whether it's Caldecott or Newberry.
Thank you. The Caldecott Award winners. So they usually like to leave some funds in there, but we could take a look at that line.
All right, we're digging.
We're digging these are the small
I was
pebbles.
out big game hunting here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. One other question, that's, appears to be around 20,000, but it may not be. Under, pupil personnel services, we seem to be moving a .2 FTE from building to building, is that inaccurate? Okay,
That's
so,
the school psychologist.
Yes.
you know?
school psychologist, yep, it goes down,
To 0.8 and then up from 1.2 to 1.4.
well, it appears to go from 1.4 to 1.6, at least that's what the spreadsheet says.
Oh, okay, that's what it's.
But the
2%.
1.4 to 1.6 is an increase of 41,000. But the 1 to 0.8 is a decrease of 20,000.
Ah,
So I wasn't sure what was going on there. It may be perfectly,
Tell me which
It's
we,
salary level of
so the-
people involved.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
salary level
going
of
up a
the
grade.
people involved.
okay. Okay, it's, I don't know what page I'm on. I'm on PPS psychologist, I think?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. That makes sense. I was just curious. And we need to do that because we need to do that, I guess, for just to to work with the kids in the right buildings and all that good stuff.
that's where the pain is, yeah.
So the staff, I believe, is following the kid.
Yep, okay.
Last year's budget increase was 2.27%.
Yeah, I thought it was
Shy of-
nice.
It was $399,000 increase.
2.2.
2.27,
Oh, that's where we ended up.
yeah.
That was after the 100.
It's
Which
on your
is-
beautiful Easton budget page.
That's,
Yeah.
but we had help with more grant money, we had some things that were and we had a great.
We had a very lucky
Okay.
year.
We had
in
a lucky year
healthcare.
with
very
healthcare.
very lucky
That's right.
year. Yeah, okay.
If it stays warm, we might.
And everybody wears an extra sweater.
Yeah.
Turn the heat down.
We
Now
might,
you're gonna jinx us.
we might be in an okay, like, we might
Yeah.
save on utilities.
Yeah, all right, well.
I hesitated to say that.
How
out
are those
loud.
solar panels doing over there?
Um,
I don't understand, I mean, seriously, I'm gonna come back when I retire and figure out what the hell happened, because we pay a $60-some-odd thousand lease payment, and our electricity keeps going up every year. I don't understand what happened. I know nobody else does, but it's bonkers. It doesn't make any sense to me, how we have, 3 acres of solar panels, and yet the electricity over there is as much or more than it is here. I know the building's bigger over there, and we pay $60,000 a year in lease payments for the privilege of having solar panels in our backyard.
So I'm very intrigued by this myself, and I have a meeting,
Yeah.
I have a meeting with the folks, and when I have that meeting, I will.
Feel free to invite me or zoom me in.
I'll invite you to
I
come.
would love to understand what happened.
Yes, so I think that would be very interesting, and I got, they did send me some spreadsheets, and I wanna talk about that with them, and a date. I picked something in, after the budget process.
There's not like a switch we're not having turned on or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh! Now it flows.
I mean, we were,
All these years
you
we've
remember,
been
we were
paying.
gonna be selling power back to town hall.
Right.
It was gonna
It's gonna be a
be,
profit center.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially when
When
the
were they
second one.
installed?
I don't know, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, no, that's,
Well,
I think
than
that's
that.
called a pig in a poke.
Yeah, and when they wanted to talk about doing something here, we're just like, make that work first.
Yeah. Yep, I'm going to meet with the Easton Energy and Environmental Task Force. I'll
Good.
invite you to attend.
Yeah, please do, okay. The only other quick question I had is, it looks like we have
Yeah,
I'm
great.
sure, I'm
we
sure.
flipping out social workers, there's a social worker going from 97 to 73, and that usually means a retirement or something.
Resignation.
Social worker left.
Resignation.
Resignation, okay. And 73 would be is the replacement that we've already identified, so to
Yeah.
speak? Yep,
Yeah,
perfect.
so, yeah, resignation and lower step higher.
Okay.
Great pitch.
Can I call the question?
Be my guest.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the budget of 3.65 as the superintendent has outlined for us for the 23-24 school year.
can we just amend that and put a number in there as well, Jeff? So can we do
Increase
the
of-
math up there and say that the actual number will be 18,690,000
Okay, yeah.
or
So
whatever?
is it,
Should be that
just
one.
checking, is that, these are the right cells?
You're at 18,614.
18,614,956, which is an increase of 654,814.
Very good.
Seconded?
Second, John, thank you. All in favor?
Discussion first.
Sure,
Discussion
sorry.
first. I like it, yeah.
Technically.
He's got a date at 8:15.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, John.
Are we
Well,
not showing them that this is
I think we showed them.
options?
I would be shocked if Randy in his presentation and Dr. McKinnon in the presentation doesn't highlight the fact that, hey, this is already us belt tightening. So I suspect that there will be a very good effort to make the case that this is our rock bottom number.
Gotcha, okay.
We will, and again, similar to last year's philosophy, I think, which is here that we're starting with a plan. We did, Dr. McKinnon and the team developed a plan over the course of a year plus. These are the additions that we need to have for the plan. The math coordinator, the curriculum, and for the math and the science is sort of a given. I mean, we're 10 plus years in, and I say that that's my personal view, and I hope that's shared by the Board of Finance. And then you have contractual increases
Yeah, do
and
we know
healthcare.
how much of that increase is contractual?
We'll
We
highlight
will,
that.
we will. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we're gonna need to do
We don't
that.
have
for
to
I
sure.
don't have that, but
Yeah,
I'm still
but if
figuring it
that
out.
number is 800 and, I forget what the number is, 860 or whatever,
650.
the contractual and the healthcare is probably 600 of that.
Yeah.
Maybe 650. And so, if we can't do a new math textbook, if we can't do science, and we can't do a math coordinator to implement the math, that we're spending $75,000 on, then we shouldn't do either, and then we go back to our test scores, and where do you want the town to be from a performance standpoint, and
Yeah.
and the last thing I would say is, and I don't blame them, they're not necessarily interested in what happens in Trumbull or Wilton or any other place, because they have their own issues and challenges, as do we. But inflation, and I know the vast majority of our contract has nothing to do with inflation because the teachers' contracts are fixed. Healthcare does. Healthcare definitely is impacted by inflation, and all the other things that run the building, the heating, the electrical, whatever, that's all fixed. So to say it's a 3.5%, 3.65, with what everybody's talking about, CPI today of 6+. I'm not shocked to see the other towns coming in at 6. I don't know what their teacher contracts and all that stuff looks like, but it's not 6, it's probably 3s, and ours are in the mid 3s or thereabout 3. So between steps and contractual increases and all that stuff. So
That's right.
I think
We'll
we
give it our
can
best shot.
tell that narrative, but we could also talk about how we have a 3-year strategic priority, which we started last year, and
Right.
if we have a vision, and this is a foundation step towards significant improvement.
we have everything you just said, and we also have goals with numbers and metrics,
right.
measurable things assigned to them. Not that we haven't in the past, we've always had standardized testing and everything that measures us against our peers and the kids and how they perform, but we've put it on paper. We've said, this is where we want to be next year and the year after, and help us get there with.
And knowing that North Star, that point in space we're trying to get to, is what gives me a lot of confidence. And as I look through this budget, a lot of confidence that every dollar we're spending is a dip of the ore in the water that is coordinated and moving us towards that point in space, as opposed to thrashing around in the water, which I think a lot of districts find themselves in because they haven't done this strategic planning exercise. They haven't set those goals. And so we think we should do some of this, we think we should do some of that. I feel really good about the coordination of this spend with our goals.
Okay. Where were we?
Right. Any other comments on the offer on the table?
Devin, I don't know, you can hear us all right, yeah?
I can hear you. Yeah, you're great. I mean, I think it's fine. I really do hate cutting a custodian because I just know how large that building is, but I'll live with it.
Yeah, and it's cutting what was going to be an ad and, so not making that, but I love the commitment to doing the study to really make the case for it, so that.
And the new position at central office, right?
Right, helps with that, yeah, really good point.
Vicky, has there been anyone taken advantage of the letting us know early that they're gonna be retiring?
I received no response, but I did send out a message about it, but we're not aware of any retirees.
Okay.
And they know we're not going to do a.
No, we're not.
We're not in that business.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good.
Just looking for more money, that's all.
Yeah, right. Okay. You wanna call the question?
Yeah, ready for a vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Devin?
Devin, you might wanna unmute as well. She's raising her hand, but I think I'm the only.
Hi. Yeah, sorry. Yes.
Question passes 6-0. Motion passes 6-0. Fantastic. Where's my agenda?
Right here.
Okay. Administrative reports.
All right.
Can you move?
I need to email to all of you, sort of hot off the press update regarding science of reading. Our wonderful committed elementary literacy specialists have been working so hard and so thoughtfully on this process. I've been providing you all regular updates regarding the legislation and our response to the legislation and our desire to make a thoughtful, prudent decision regarding next steps.
Devin has the email, right? You sent the email to the.
Yes,
entire
it is
board.
in the email electronically.
Yes, I have it. Thank you.
So we requested a waiver, and what the waiver does is it forces us to go through a process of doing a very thorough examination of our current curriculum resources to determine where they meet the expectations of the state and where they fall short. And that allows us to make a more informed decision about what would be the best fit for us moving forward. And whether, with some more time, the state might allow districts to use a collection of resources. There's a fair amount of talk, especially in this area of Connecticut, about just that. Or if it does make sense indeed for us to put forward to all of you and to the voters a request for a comprehensive elementary reading program in the 24-25 budget. So this is a time-consuming process. I mean, we will be submitting dozens of pages of information to the state. And unfortunately, it does take our literacy specialists away from their work with students, which is, of course, incredibly important. But it will allow us to have a clarified direction forward, and so in that way, it's worth it. The waiver is due on the last day of this month. It will also be accompanied by student performance information that is disaggregated. I will say that process of analysis has been fascinating. We're not done with it yet, but of course we're looking at subgroups within our population who are also performing at a substantially deficient level, so that we can really think about what do we need to know about those students and then the supports that we're providing them, and whether those supports come in the form of intervention, personnel, and or curriculum resources, and that's really part of the discussion. So that work continues. I'm working with the team again tomorrow for another full day, and we also will continue to look at the state-approved resources. All of the Durg A districts, with the exception of one, will be requesting a waiver from the state. So we continue to learn. So we are looking at piloting some of the units in the approved resources. One resource is free. We've done some work with vendors. We think we'll be able to get sample units so that our teachers then can be more actively involved in the process without subbing our teachers out to go visit other districts, which we know based on the sub shortage is basically impossible. So we do want to include our teachers. We want their input. We want their feedback. And we want the gift of time to do this well. This is a tremendous change in the way that we build literacy. And I think for a very long time, we've all believed that we were doing right by our students and doing the right thing based on the most current research. And this is a big shift for us. So if we do make a change, we're going to need to be sure that it's accompanied by a lot of professional development and a lot of communication, and that we feel good about it rather than jumping in too quickly.
Big investment.
Absolutely. I mean, not
Time
just
and money.
not just financially, but it's
Exactly.
the way that our students build literacy needs to also keep in mind the importance of a student-centered experience, right? That we're teaching children. And yes, we absolutely need to build foundational skills, but we need to do it in a manner that's engaging for students and helps them to develop a love of reading and writing and communicating. So that's where we are.
Stephanie, has the state given any indication that they might not accept our waiver, or?
Oh, yes, that is quite possible. So what we understand is that there will be a little bit of a back and forth, not unlike what happened, you might remember, Jeff, with the evaluation plan legislation.
Yeah.
When we submitted a waiver, they came back with questions, we responded with questions. At that time, there was a much more comprehensive crew up at the State Department of Education. And at that time, Dr. Josephberg and I traveled to Hartford on a couple of different occasions to have face-to-face meetings with people from the talent office.
Right.
We have been told that there will be some back and forth and that we should expect additional questions. Ultimately, if they reject our request, it still allows us an additional year. So that's what we understand will occur.
Okay.
We're answering the questions in a completely honest manner. We're not going to try and say that we're doing something that we're not doing. If the people who are working most closely with teachers and with the materials are saying, well, we see this statement, but in the actual work, this portion is a weakness to us, and they're being very honest about that. We will also see a change to the universal reading assessments. The state has released a new list of universal assessments, so there will be some changes in terms of the long time work to establish a reading level, which is not completely aligned with the most current science of reading research.
Stephanie, who do you see this benefiting the most or changing for the betterment of the student population? Like, who is this really, not to say it's not targeted to Easton, because we can always improve how we
Oh, you mean across the state?
Yeah.
The districts that have struggled for many reasons to perform on par with expectations, right? So there are just so many different variables that play into that. Sometimes it's the resources within the district to provide personnel, as well as curriculum resources, as well as family support, sort of absenteeism, the struggles sometimes of different subgroups within the population. So there's so many different variables that have a role in student performance. Within Durgay, in this part of Fairfield County, the argument has been our students are performing very well. Now the state will say, well, if they're not 100%, they're not performing very well. But that sounds a little bit like a No Child Left Behind type of argument, right? The 100% of students are going to meet goal is, certainly we should always strive to do our very best, but is that realistic?
But is this, we see you're teaching K-3 this way, and we really think it should be a different way because, so they really want to sort of modify or course correct how the entire state teaches early learners how to read.
Yeah, there is great concern that students across the state are not building core knowledge through the development of foundational skills. So what that really means is phonics instruction, phonological awareness and phonics instruction, that there are too many students across the state, probably across the country, who are learning through an approach that includes a cueing system, using picture cues or using patterns, and that does work for a lot of students, but research tells us that we should be using an approach that is most likely to help the greatest number of students. And decoding is an approach that will help the most students. And so our core program should be based on that. And our program includes different resources that include that type of foundational skill approach, but it's not one core program. It's a collection of resources. And so it does, you know, to be completely honest, our teachers need to do, and our specialists need to do a fair amount of mapping work to say, in this unit of study, this is the standard and the set of skills that you're trying to address. And so when you're differentiating your instruction for students, you're looking at not just the lesson, but then you also need to look at the skill behind that. And there's a lot more teacher planning that is required in our current resources than would be required in one of the comprehensive programs that the state has approved, because it's all mapped out. And there are definite benefits to that, and I think that there are some negative aspects to that as well, right? You want the teacher to have a little bit of autonomy to be creative and to make the experience lively for students. And so the worry is that someone's following a teacher manual and on September 17th, you must be on page X. But I don't think that would really ever be the story for Easton. So, you know, as I said, we're being careful and we're trying to learn about the programs in a way that's open-minded.
It's fair to say that we agree with the science reading and sort of this approach. It's fair to say that the Dirt A districts in general agree that this is the right approach.
Yes.
The question is not the what of that, but the how. And I think what we're saying is, well, we're doing this already, and here's how we're doing it, and they want us to kind of, well, prove it. And then there are other districts who don't necessarily agree because they just haven't thought about it because they're too busy putting out fires or whatever else. And so the legislation is meant to say, like, guys, come on, the science is solid on this. You gotta move into this century for how you're teaching reading.
You need to take this seriously.
Right.
And so with a very comprehensive program, when you have a lot of teachers and you hire a lot of teachers every year, which is true for some of our larger districts across the state, and there's not a lot of money for coaches or for professional learning, it makes sense to purchase a program that's gonna map out the instructional program day to day. It just makes sense, right? Because then the teachers on their own in their classroom have a teacher's manual. It says, I'm gonna administer the assessment on this day. Based on this score, this is the next step, this is the lesson. And because we invest in our teachers differently, that's not really the way we do things.
Right.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, are we gonna get an update on social studies?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, you absolutely will. In January, our middle school teachers had a very productive day of work. They have revised the wording on some of the units based on the feedback that you provided. I provided our board chair a highlighted copy of the latest revisions, including a revision to the 8th grade enduring understandings. I think specifically the Civil War unit was the one where we changed enduring understanding. The next step would be to bring it to the Board of Education Curriculum Committee, which is meeting next month before the next Easton Board of Education meeting. I have learned through communication over the weekend actually with our State Department of Ed consultant for social studies that the state is going to release a new social studies framework most likely by June. So I don't think it makes sense to do a whole lot more revision work if they're about to release new frameworks. The word is that the new frameworks will provide more specificity, especially in the early grades, which will certainly help us, because I have not tackled the elementary revisions yet. And so if they're guiding us with more specifics, that will be useful for us. The middle school social studies team was beginning to shift towards creating that benchmark assessment that I talked about, using the framework in order to create a common Easton and Reading benchmark assessment. And that's where they are in their work, and they need more time to continue to do that. But I'll be able to provide an update and share the documents at the curriculum committee meeting next month.
Thank you.
Okay, does that do it for administrative reports? Okay, we'll move on to Committee reports, board committee reports. Any reports from the committees?
The next curriculum committee meeting is on March 9th. It's Thursday at 6 o'clock, right before our next regular Board of Education meeting. And it's at Helen Keller Middle School. We have 3 topics. One, Dr. Pearson Yogal just mentioned, which is our social studies curriculum discussion. We have a science curriculum discussion, and then just an update on the reading waiver if there is one at that point. That's it.
Okay, great.
You wanna talk about food service? Sarah,
Sure.
we've heard through the grapevine that, the state is going to extend the free lunch program for the balance of the year. When we get something in writing that confirms that, then we will certainly send out a notification to all the parents in the district and, to make sure that everyone is aware.
Fantastic. All right, anything else? We're good? Policy's policy?
No new news for policy.
Excellent. All right, we'll jump into board member comment. I'll start over there. John, anything?
Just
No?
thank you. It's
Yep.
been great working on this process with everyone so far, and look forward to the rest of it.
Yep, likewise.
Ditto.
Jen, okay. Michelle?
Ditto on that, and I do hope that the Board of Finance sees the 3.65% increases, something the town is gonna be able to support for all the various reasons we discussed, scores and otherwise, so, yeah, and I'm more than happy to help anyone prepare for that meeting with talking points.
Excellent.
The, one thing that we haven't talked about, that just falls under the case of a reminder, is that, the student population at Barlow has gone from 51 and change up to 53 and change. And so, if Barlow doesn't have any increase, which I don't think is a realistic goal, that Easton will get a bill for $510,000.
And that's based on current enrollment.
Current enrollment.
5347 is current enrollment.
Right, so, I'm sure that the Board of Finance will have all the detail and will be sharing that with us, so we might as well understand that it's coming and, be ready in kind.
Yeah. Is there anything else in the town budget that's a big, I don't know if, the sale of the land added a few dollars to the town fund, for lack of a better term, but, any other big projects? I mean, they have the EMS center, that's a combination of state money, fundraising.
Yeah, there's the $2 million from, the CARE Act.
The infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, their own fundraising, and then there's whether this is going to be the number that's been kicked around is $7 million for this, building, and they just built one in Greenwich for $1 million, so I would imagine there's probably gonna be some discussion that might bring that $7 million down. But, that's certainly gonna be a part of what Easton's gonna have to deal with, and undoubtedly will go out, go out for a bond. Work it that way.
Okay. Devin, anything else? Board member comment?
Nope, none for me, thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody. I think it's safe to say we can amend the calendar and delete the workshop meeting for next Tuesday, February 21st, unless you guys
No, sounds good.
push my arm. All right.
Did you invite us all over to your house?
Yeah, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Jen, second. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
Thank you, gang.
All in favor?
Bye all, have a good one.